What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to yet another video here on the channel. Today and starting this week, we have got something a little different and new, as we will be talking about the brand new Game of Thrones series, The House of the Dragon. We want to expand our content, and we already absolutely love the world of Game of Thrones and everything its lore and story brings to us. So we are now going to talk about the new series. This series is already on the 5th episode, so we are a bit behind on talking about it, but it is better late than never to start talking about these things. The main focus of the video will be breaking down the 5th episode and giving our thoughts on it, but also sort of just recapping our thoughts on the entire series as of now as well, just to quickly catch up with that. So with all of that mess out of the way, there will be tons of spoilers in this video about the series, source material stuff, and the original series as well. So if you don't want spoilers for any of that stuff, make sure to click off now, as we will be diving into this episode and the lore behind everything that's going on. So this is your spoiler warning now. Feel free to come back here once you have seen the episode, or just stick around here for a while if you have seen it, or just wish to hear about what's going on in the series and some opinions on the show. Alright, with all of that being said, let's get into the 5th episode of The House of the Dragon, titled We Light the Way. We start off this episode in the Vale, the same kingdom or region in the north where Bronn became Tyrion's right-hand man, and where Littlefinger pushed Lisa Arryn down the trapdoor to gain power in the region. Here in the Vale, we meet Lady Rhea, who is the wife of Daemon Targaryen, and we have heard him mention her throughout the series, but we just have not seen her until now. After she greets her cousin and rides off, she ends up being caught in the middle of a pathway by Daemon, who stands there in his hood. With Daemon's recent actions and his demeanor, it was almost obvious what he was about to do to her, as he pushes Rhea off of her horse, causing her to seemingly become paralyzed, and then he grabs a rock and kills her. We see the king sickly on his ship as they sail to high tide. This sickness continues throughout this episode, and we see exactly where it leads to right at the end. They sail to high tide to try and propose a marriage between Rhaenyra and Laenor Velaryon to bring the houses together once more, especially for when Rhaenyra's time for the throne comes and she needs an heir for herself. As we know from the last episode, Otto Hightower was removed from his position as Hand of the King after the rumors of Rhaenyra and Daemon were spread around due to one of his spies. As he begins to leave King's Landing, his daughter Alicent begs him not to go, but he must leave. But before he does though, he reminds her of Aegon and how Aegon should be brought to be the heir and not Rhaenyra, as he believes that the realm will not accept her as queen, and when she becomes queen, war will break out. He continues down this road of pushing his daughter to somehow bring forth Aegon as the heir to the Iron Throne, as he tells her that Rhaenyra will have Aegon and Alicent's other children killed once she gains the throne, so that nobody can oppose her position. After Otto leaves, we cut to the arrival of the king and Rhaenyra at high tide, where they arrive to a relatively empty courtyard other than Laenor and Joffrey Lonmouth. Lord Corlys's actions of not greeting the king for his arrival is seen as an act of disrespect, but the king chooses to ignore it and get this meeting over with. In King's Landing, we see the weirwood tree of the city, these trees being carved by the children of the forest, and these trees would eventually be spots of prayer for the old gods. Lord Larys lurking in the background as the queen stares upon the tree, Larys being a very shady and manipulative figure. He ends up telling Alicent that the Grand Maester delivered tea to the princess's chambers, causing the queen to further fall into the belief of the rumors of Daemon and Rhaenyra being true. The king and his new hand, Lord Lionel, meet with Lord Corlys and his wife Rhaenys Targaryen to discuss the marriage between their son Laenor and Rhaenyra. The families agree upon terms of their children taking the last name of Targaryen when they sit on the Iron Throne after Rhaenyra's time on the throne passes on to them. Laenor and Rhaenyra walk the beaches of high tide and speak on their marriage and how it's mainly just for political purposes, and that they can do what they want freely after they marry and have their heirs in place. As we know, Rhaenyra is in love with Sir Criston Cole, her personal guardsman, and we later learn that Laenor is in love with his friend that we saw him dueling with earlier in the courtyard, Joffrey Lonmouth. Corlys and Rhaenys talk in their throne room after Viserys leaves, as they speak of the danger that will come with Rhaenyra when she takes the Iron Throne, as the realm will not accept a queen as the one on the throne, much like how Otto was talking about earlier. In the room, we do see the mask that the Crab Feeder wore. Now, I wasn't certain of this at first, but it is quite obvious now that this mask that he wore is a damaged version of the mask that we saw the Sons of Harpy wearing in the first series. On the ship ride back to King's Landing, Criston and Rhaenyra speak of the marriage that is about to happen, and he tries to tell her that he broke the oath he took and that she should just leave with him and get away from all of the political stuff going on and just marry him. She says that the marriage between her and her cousin is only for the political side of things, and that they made an agreement that they could do as they freely wish after the marriage, trying to tell Criston that they can still be together even if she's not married to him. Criston seems to take offense to this, and he just walks away. As the king arrives back in the courtyard of King's Landing, he collapses due to this sickness that he has, as the queen watches over this from the balcony above. The queen ends up calling Criston to her room to question him of if the rumors of Daemon and Rhaenyra are true, but he instead comes forward and explains that him and Rhaenyra are the ones that were together. The king lies in his room, obviously very ill, and we see the infection on his arm is growing and getting far worse. This infection doesn't look like grayscales to me. I do believe that this may come from the throne itself, as we did see him cut his finger on the throne, and after the infection seemed to get worse. All of the houses of the realm gather at King's Landing for the wedding feast and celebration. We see Lannisters, Hightowers, House Royce, and then the House of Valerion arrive to bring this wedding together. Before they can start though, Daemon ends up walking in and taking a seat at the front table unexpectedly and seemingly uninvited. While the king begins to give his speech, the queen interrupts it as she walks in to be seated at the table. We hear people in the crowd mentioning how the color of her dress is green, and that House Hightower's beacon is this color, and that it glows green when Old Town calls its banners to war, possibly alluding to more conflict to come. Laenor and Rhaenyra, as well as many in the crowd, do a traditional dance for the wedding. As they all dance together, we can see both of their secret lovers looking at them with obvious jealousy, and this is going to lead to another bad wedding. As the dance continues, Gerald Royce confronts Daemon on the death of Rhea, telling him that even Targaryens pay for their crimes in the Vale. Daemon pulls it off and turns it around, as he states that since he was married to Rhea, he is owed inheritance and the ownership of Runestone now that Rhea is dead and they did not have any heirs together. Daemon ends up making a move on Laena Valerion as the dancing keeps on going, as Laenor and Joffrey talk of who Rhaenyra's secret lover is as they stare at Criston. This all leads to another violent incident at a wedding in Game of Thrones, as Joffrey ends up going up to Criston and basically threatening him, telling him that their secrets have to be kept safe or they won't be safe, budging into him as he walks away, which all leads to a very bad day for Joffrey, as Daemon and Rhaenyra speak of the marriage, and Daemon asking her if this is really what she wants. The crowd begins screaming and dispersing, as we find out Criston is killing Joffrey in the middle of the wedding and dancing, making the actual wedding ceremony very awkward and emotional between Rhaenyra and Laenor. Criston sits on his knees in the courtyard at night, as it looks like he is about to take his own life after everything that just happened, but Queen Alicent shows up, says his name, causing him to stop. As Laenor and Rhaenyra officially get married, we do see Alicent is there, so these two scenes are taking place at different times, but as they are pronounced husband and wife, the king ends up collapsing again, which is where this episode ends off. Now that we've touched on everything that happened in this episode, we have to give our thoughts on the episode and the series as a whole so far. So far, this series has been an absolute blast, and every episode has been extremely strong, entertaining, cinematically beautiful, and the story has been very interesting interesting and intriguing. The action so far, although there has not been tons of it, has also been very good. These stakes continue to get higher with every episode that passes by, and soon enough we are going to really see the conflict and people playing the Game of Thrones to get more power and to get to the Iron Throne. The show so far has felt a lot like the prime and the best seasons of the original show, and there really hasn't been a single miss or a single bad episode yet, and we are already halfway through this first season. This episode, being the 5th episode of the series, is probably my favorite one that we have gotten so far, and each episode seems to be getting better and better as they release. I absolutely loved this episode and every episode of the series so far. I don't really have any gripes or issues with this show at all so far. The pacing and everything else has been wonderful. I am super excited to see where episode 6 brings us, especially seeing that we are going almost a decade or more into the future after the 5th episode. So that's what we thought of this episode and how we are liking the series so far, but we want to know how much you guys are enjoying it, so make sure to let us know your thoughts on the series in the comments. With all of that being said, that about does it for our first video on the House of the Dragon. As I always say, thank you all for watching. If you are feeling extra nerdy today, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel with notifications on to support the channel and to get even more nerdy content just like this. We will see you all the next time that we go through and explore the nerdy multiverse.